right now. I want to welcome to the program Kelly Maher from Revealing Politics out in Colorado. How are you, Kelly?
Hi, friend.
How are you doing?
Hello. I'm fabulous.
Hello,
How are you?
I am fantastic. Boy, I tell you what, you all are leading the news cycle there in Colorado this week. The Denver Post has been writing stories every day. This is the big political story in the state of Colorado right now. Governor John Hickenlooper's bizarre comments to the Colorado sheriffs last week.
Yeah, well, I mean, it seems like he finally realized that maybe he made a huge mistake, not big enough, or didn't realize it to an extent that he actually decided not to sign all of those wrong-headed bills that we had talked about ad nauseum last year. But, it's really actually it was a fascinating thing to watch. We have it posted in its entirety on our YouTube channel. We also have some specific clips that are put up just because, quite frankly, it was a very rambling, very hard to follow speech and apology.
Yeah, it was, and it's interesting that you guys have sort of broken this down into different segments to make it easier to follow along. Yesterday, you all posted the portion of his remarks where he was talking about the magazine ban, and I thought this was really interesting. And look, I would say if you're living in Colorado and you're watching this program, share this video with non-gun owners as well. Because to me, this is a striking example of the failure of leadership that so many of us around the country are frustrated with. Governor Hickenlooper says, when it comes to that magazine ban, funny thing, we didn't think it was going to pass the legislature. And so a staffer actually said, well, if it gets to his desk, we'll sign it. And look, when a staffer says something like that, you're speaking for you, you're sort of committed. You try not to go back on your word. So because some staffer who he didn't name told somebody who he didn't name that if the bill got to his desk, he would sign it, he felt compelled to sign this bill that he then went on to trash, Kelly.
Oh, yeah, and he said exactly what you and I talked about over and over and over again last year, that the bill was unenforceable, that the bill would do and now currently does absolutely nothing except for force good people at companies like Magpul out of the state of Colorado. I actually, because it was such a long, rambling, kind of bizarre apology, this morning I did a listicle. I think it's still on the front page of redstate.com, where I pulled out what I thought were the 9 points that were most interesting in the under 10-minute apology. But, I mean, here's the thing, Cam, is that the magazine ban was by far the most controversial bill. It was the thing we talked about the most. And the governor just said, well, gosh darn it, I had no idea it was going to be that controversial. So either he didn't look out of protesters, or he didn't turn on the radio one time or look at a newspaper one time. And he signed it because a staffer promised. He took our freedom, he hurt our economy, and he took jobs because a staffer said so. And that is an indicator of a larger problem in terms of his lack of leadership.
He goes on to say they did the research that they should have done before the bill was signed. And then he says he found out that this thing is unenforceable. As you said, there are 300,000 magazines. He points out that people are still committing crimes. Again, it really sounds like he didn't come right out and say, I shouldn't have supported that, or I wouldn't support it today. But that sure is the impression that he left on that videotape. Kelly, here's the thing. I know that the governor's in Mexico this week. When he comes back, he's going to have to address this, isn't he?
Well, he came back last night. It has gotten real wall-to-wall coverage, both on television and the newspaper here. And the governor's spokesman actually refused an interview with CBS4 because really I think that they're probably scrambling and borderline kind of apoplectic about the governor's comments on this. Because think about it, it's not just an indicator of the governor's lack of leadership, which is significant. It also hurts every single Democrat in every marginal district who they whipped into voting for these. Because now we can go back and say, look, you guys all kept ranks on these. You passed these freedom-degrading bills, and you forced them on us. And even your governor says that they do nothing and that you didn't have all the information at the time that you passed them.
Yeah. I mean, again, look, I would not want to be a spokesperson for Governor Hickenlooper right now because what he said.
There's a joke amongst the News Corps that Governor Hickenlooper's staff says that letting him talk off script is like watching a baby cross the freeway.
You're just clutching your hand, praying that he gets through all right. Yeah, I can see that. I mean, look, when the governor's spokesman says, "Hey, the governor's known for putting his foot in his mouth," so when he lied to the sheriffs and said that he hadn't talked to Bloomberg and the phone records had already come out showing that he had, I mean, that's just the governor putting his foot in his mouth. Isn't that a great excuse, by the way?
Because the governor misspoke. And let me tell you, of all of the things that the governor actually said that were declarative, the one thing was that he did not talk to Michael Bloomberg. He said, let's get our facts straight. I did not talk to Michael Bloomberg. It was a lie. It wasn't misspeaking. It was a lie.
It was. It was.
Yes.
I mean, and it was again. It was bold. It was right there. Which look. Here's the thing. If you're going to go and you're going to lie like that, what does the apology mean? Particularly when the apology is followed up with a, "I apologize. What the bleep do you want?"
Yeah. The governor actually cussed he used the F word in front of the sheriff. And look, I'm not. As you all know, off air, I'm not absolved of sometimes using a cuss word here and there. But when you're standing in front of a group of people who you refused to meet with during these critical points in the debate, when he, had the time to talk to Michael Bloomberg, but not the sheriff, not the elected first line of defense in our state. And then to say, well, I already said I'm sorry once. What the F do you want? That is really, he said it jokingly, but he sounds kind of angry and he sounds really very touchy about that because, apparently all you need to do is apologize once.
Right, and I mean, it has to be. I was going to say it has to be said. There were some in the group of sheriffs who laughed, and there was even some applause there. I think he tried to pass it off as a joke, but you're right. There was that genuine sense of frustration of, look, I said I'm sorry. What more do you want? To which I'm guessing there were at least 10 sheriffs in that room who would have said, well, why are you still supporting these laws when we're suing to overturn them? And maybe file an amicus brief as governor, admitting you're wrong, and saying that these laws don't need to be on the books. That's something you can do, right?
The governor admitting at least that the magazine ban does nothing is, I think, a really, really critical part of that. He goes, well, and then we got our statistics after the fact, and actually, this is not enforceable.
Yeah, again, I mean, it is fascinating video. I'm honestly a little surprised, Kelly. I know it's big news in Colorado, as it should be. I know we've got also a lot of other big news around the country, but given that the national media was just talking about gun control last week, it was one of their big stories last week. Was, are we going to have more gun control laws? One would think that the governor of the state that bucked the trend, and passed these gun control laws, one would think that his comments on this to these county sheriffs would be compelling and newsworthy of national attention, and yet it's largely been crickets.
Yeah, I'm surprised by that as well, especially because there were, and part of it is if you watch the apology, there really are. It's like it's one of those situations where there's just so many points to make that it's really difficult to pull out what is critical, which is why I did that, top 9 moments and what they mean and why they're important, because it's like not only did he pass the bill without having all of the facts and sign it, and he signed at least one of the pieces of legislation because a staffer told him to, that he doesn't actually think is effective. But, in addition to that, he now says that not only is it not effective, that it really was a bill that doesn't actually do anything here in the state. He actually at one point, I am not making this up, Cam, he took his hand, he made it into the shape of a gun, which, by the way, if you were an elementary school student, would have gotten him suspended. And I was like, well, if a punk kid wants a magazine, it's not like he's going to have a hard time spray shooting up his neighborhood. Like, the governor of the state said that to the sheriff. It's kind of incredible.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is. Well, listen, I know that we're going to be continuing to talk about this because with the governor back in town, hopefully he'll go before the press. I still think he needs to talk to the people of Colorado as forthrightly as he talked to the sheriffs, although I'm not sure how many would want to listen to him. But look, if he's going to apologize to the sheriffs, he needs to apologize to the gun owners that he ignored too.
Yeah, and to the people who worked for Magpul. Actually, I think if there's anybody who he owes the biggest apology to, it's Magpul, which is the formerly Colorado magazine company, because he says that he signed this bill because a staffer promised, and he didn't know the controversy that it would cause. So he's either woefully ignorant or intentionally misled.
Yeah. And woefully, that kind of understates things. I mean, he would he would make Obama look on the ball.
Right?
Really, right? And again, we've seen so many of these politicians, Kelly, say, well, the buck stops right below me. It stops right there at upper management, but not really executive management. This is as
my favorite tweet goes to there was a district attorney. His name is George Brockler, who took the article and he tweeted out breaking: the governor is powerless to override promise of staffer. It's just like that's basically where we are on this. We have the governor's unnamed staff setting very controversial statewide policy.
Well, thank goodness it's an election year, Kelly, because voters have a chance to speak their mind this year. Listen, I appreciate you coming on the program, and let us know. Love to talk to you again about this when the governor makes some additional comments.
Oh, yeah, it will. Trust me, I'll be calling.
All right. Thanks, Kelly. Kelly Maher from Revealing Politics. You can follow him online at revealingpolitics.com.